school uniforms, right? Who loves to wear Hollister hoodies? Levi jeans, or even Jordan shoes? Many people dress differently in the clothes they like. This is a form in which people express themselves. And if someone were to tell you how to express yourself, you may feel some type of way about that. Sorry. Clothes can define who people are, and it is important for people to express themselves freely. Although school uniforms seem appropriate for students and are more formal, school uniforms restrict students' freedom in expressing themselves creatively. I have done research over uniforms and have learned more about school uniforms and the reasoning for and against it. First, I will discuss the purpose and history of school uniforms. Second, I will discuss the pros of school uniforms and why some schools require students to wear them. And finally, I will discuss the cons of school uniforms and why they are unnecessary. Although school uniforms seem appropriate for students and are more formal, school uniforms restrict students' freedom in expressing themselves creatively. School uniforms are not new and have been around for quite some time, and there are purposes for them according to educators. School uniforms originated from England in 1222 according to History of School. They were required to wear a robe-like outfit called the capicola. This is not like it, but even in the beginning of the 1900s, they would wear like a suit and a tie and a nice hat. The Archbishop of Canterbury mandated this for the first time. School uniforms in the United States follow the traditional use of uniforms established in England. The first U.S. public schools known to use uniforms were in Maryland and Washington, D.C. in the fall of 1987. By the fall of 1988, 41 public schools in Washington, D.C. issued mandatory uniforms, and soon the movement spread to other states. Although school uniforms seem unnecessary, educators believe they are needed and good for students. A school uniform teaches students to dress keenly and take pride in their appearance, according to Brian Williams' article from the Open News. A few people also believe that school uniforms can improve learning by lessening diversion, owning center around schoolwork, and making the classroom a better environment, allowing students to succeed academically. I have just informed you the history of school uniforms and the purpose of them. Now, let us talk about the pros of school uniforms. Although school uniforms seem ridiculous to some students, there is no denying a few pros to them. School uniforms may bring uniformity in classes. According to Michelle Kuzman's article, Reasons Why Kids Should Use Uniforms to School, educators and experts believe the school uniforms contribute positively in their behavior. Students feel more professional uniforms, thus behaving accordingly. School uniforms make mornings easier for both students and parents because students already know what they need to wear the next day. Two reasons a few schools require school uniforms is because of dress code and bullying. Schools without uniforms still have dress code policies, and to avoid all the tracking of whether or not students are in dress code, school uniforms avoid this and make it easier on the school and the administrators and teachers. In an era of status brands and high fashion trends, clothing has become a definitive status symbol for children and teens. But if students are required to wear school uniforms, students will not judge one another for what they're wearing and how they look. Understanding why schools require uniforms can give you insight on the perspective and reasoning for them, but being knowledgeable over their reasoning allows the cons to be much more considered. School uniforms are not required by many schools for a reason, and there are many cons to them. According to Michelle Kuzman's article, Why School Uniforms Are a Bad Idea, the most common argument against school uniforms is that they limit personal expression. Many students argue that wearing school uniforms lose their self-identity and lose their right to express themselves through fashion. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled in 1969 that it can hardly be argued that either students or teachers share their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate. Students are not comfortable in certain clothing. Kids are very specific about what they are comfortable wearing, according to Michelle Kuzman. Some children are sensitive to certain materials, while others are opposed to zippers, buttons, and restrictive clothing. School uniforms can promote conformity and can negatively affect self-image. In an era where schools and society are attempting to teach positive awareness, of differences. Requiring school children to wear uniforms emphasizes sameness and conformity. Also, if you are not required to wear a uniform, you are free to choose clothing styles that are more flattering to your particular body type. And here's a graph of why people mostly don't like uniforms. As you can see, is because it's hot, it's boring, it's itchy, and it's because it's fashion. People like to express themselves they want to. And if you're not allowed to express them the way you are, then that's just, one of the main reasons to live, which is for the pursuit of happiness. And what you choose to wear makes you happy. So today I first described the purpose and the history of school uniforms. Second, I talked about a few pros of the school uniforms. Finally, I described about the cons of school uniforms and why ultimately they are unnecessary. Although school uniforms seem appropriate for students and are more formal, school uniforms restrict students' freedom in expressing themselves creatively. As schools begin to consider uniforms, they must first think about the students and how it may affect them the most. Thank you.